Alright, good morning. I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and this is part 2 of building the Roper Wallet 2.0. Okay, so this was the very first one I made, has all the card pockets in it and stuff like that, but the one we're building in the video has less card pockets. However, it does have a clear ID window, or will have, once it's finished, a clear ID window right down here. Okay. So this is how far we got in the last video. We were building our card pockets. We built our clear ID window, which will be down at the bottom of the last pocket there. Alright, so now what we need to do is start putting it together. Okay, all of our pieces are now cut out. All of them are prepped. And now it's time for the rest of the assembly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to the overhead camera and we will continue on with making this wallet. Alright, so here we are on the overhead camera. Got to get this board up to where I know that it is all in the picture here. The next thing we have to do is some gluing. Alright, we got to put all these pockets, we got to get them glued down so that they don't wiggle around while we're trying to punch holes and sew. Okay, and then we're going to take and glue this one over the very top of it all. And then we're going to stitch up just this one side. Okay, we're only going to stitch this one side because the other side on all three sides will be stitched to the wallet back during final assembly. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take and I'm going to hold these cards just like this, and I'm going to put some glue right there on those three. Alright, and then I'm going to put it, well, the very first thing we'll do is hold your card pockets all the way flat like this and mark with your fingernail just underneath where that top one is. Let me get my fat fingers out of the way so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to mark it just underneath that top one there, and that's going to be my glue mark. Okay, I don't want to glue above that because then you'll see the glue on the outside or the finished project. Alright, so there's my little glue mark, my little tick mark right there. I'm going to put glue all along this side right here. I'm going to bend these back like I had them just a second ago and glue all along that very edge right there. Okay, not where it comes into a V, of course. That'll glue the card pocket shut. But then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to glue that left side of it down as well, and also the bottom, so that we can stitch all this together. Okay, so get out my contact cement here. I already checked to make sure my lid wasn't glued onto it, because sometimes that happens. Push the brush down a little bit there. As usual, I haven't used this in a while, and now that that stuff is thick. I'm going to have to go get my can of thinner. Alright, so I'm just going to spread it right along the edge there. Okay, and you can rough up this leather if you want to. It's actually a pretty good idea, I guess. I've always failed to do that part. But yeah, you can rough it up, and that can help you out. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just pull all these back a little bit. Put some glue on the edges of them. And yeah. Okay, now we're going to let all that set before we press it together so that our glue, has time to set and everything. I'm going to pause the camera while I do that. I'm going to put some thinner in my glue so that it can be a little bit more useful to us. Alright, added a little bit of thinner to my glue, and now I'm going to, honestly I should have done that a while ago, but I'm going to go ahead and put glue on the other sides as well. Okay, so the same thing. I'm going to mark where that top pocket sets and glue everything below it, and same with this thing. I'll glue, I forgot to glue this in the first place, so I need to glue three sides of that thing down as well. Okay, and I realize, the adhesive I'm using, it's called contact cement. Okay, and I I use the word glue as a general term, I guess you can say. But I do have people commenting, asking if, oh, well, you're using glue, is it okay if I use contact cement? Well, yeah, that's what I'm using too. I just, again, glue is a word I've been using since I was, 4 or 5 years old playing with craft paper. Contact cement is only something I've been playing with for about 10 years now. I didn't even, for the first many years of my leatherwork, didn't use contact cement. I thought that old white glue would suit all my needs. The leather weld from Tandy, and honestly, like, it's a good glue, don't get me wrong, but there are things that contact cement is way better suited for than that that white stuff, the leather weld from Tandy. Again, it's a good product. I did use it for many years. I still use it on some applications, but some applications you need contact cement. Okay. All right. So I'm going to once again pause this and wait a few minutes for this to set up, and then we'll stick it all together. Alright, a couple of minutes have passed. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pay close attention to this thing, and just like when I initially put the card pockets down and sewed them together, I want to make sure that they're all of the pocket tops are parallel to each other. Okay? Sometimes if one is just slightly askew, you may not even know that that's what it is, but when you're looking at a finished wallet and one of them's just a little bit off, you're like, something just doesn't look right here, and that could be what it is. Okay, so I'm going to start with the top one here and glue it down. I'm going to take the second one, I'm going to slide it over just a tiny bit so that it's parallel, and glue it down. Okay, I'm going to go all the way down doing that, just kind of adjusting them a tiny bit if they're needed, and sticking them down. I think the bottom one was the worst for me. I must have been getting a little off by the time I got down there. Alright, so those are all stuck down. Now I'm going to take my my clear ID window, and I'm going to line it up at the bottom corner here and kind of stick it along the bottom, but then I don't want to stick the sides until I check the top to make sure that it also is parallel with all the others, like that. Okay, now they're all stuck down. So once again, it is time to sew, and we're going to sew up this line right here because this is on this side of the wallet. Alright, so I'm going to first take a very, very sharp, fresh blade and trim that edge just the slightest little bit so that when I go to make a sew line, it's extremely straight. Okay? So, get out my little knife here and my pair of pliers. I'm going to break off this blade. I should be using one of my scalpels, but I don't have one sitting in front of me, and I do have this thing sitting in front of me. Alright, so again, I'm just very carefully, slowly if I need to, going to trim that sucker down. Okay, and expose a little bit more blade there. Should have taken it off this rubber pad to do this, and I think I will, because it's not doing too well on the rubber. Alright, take the rubber pad off for a moment, but I'm going to have to bring it right back for doing my stitch holes. There we go. Nice straight line. That almost went all the way through. Alrighty, so there that is. We're going to mark us a stitch line there. I can use wing dividers, I can use a creaser, I can use whatever. A little bit closer to the edge. Now, used to be I would stitch this all the way up to that top end there. But I'm going to stop just one stitch above, like basically that top pocket there. I'll do one stitch right at the very, just above that top pocket, and then that'll be that. I'm not going to stitch all the way to the top, because when it gets down to just one layer of 2 to 3 ounce, the stitch will look different above that, because it's so thin. Alright, so to do that, I'll take my frickin' iron here, and I'm going to set one tooth just above that pocket and the rest of them below it. And I'll give it a whack. Okay, so again, I've got one stitch or one hole just above that pocket and the rest are below it. Luckily, all of these happen to be falling to where the pricking iron at 8 stitches per inch is not piercing the very edge of the top of a card pocket. So I got lucky. Sometimes I have to adjust my stitch just a little bit because I don't want it to cut the top part of one of these pockets. Okay, one more little hole at the bottom there. All right, and there's what I'm going to stitch up. Again, I'm hand sewing this wallet, so I'm going to pause the camera and grab my little stitching clamp and go to town on it. When I come back, that'll be stitched up. All right, there we are. Congratulations. We have already done the hardest part of this wallet. Now, I'm going to take me a little edger, and I'm going to edge that right there so that I can burnish it. Alright, now due to the way that we have assembled this, it is smartest to edge it from bottom to top. If you try to go top to bottom, you're going to hit every one of those card pockets. It's going to be a problem. Okay, the edger I'm using is an experimental one that we ordered to see if we liked it or not, and well, so far I do. Okay, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the back, but it doesn't matter if I go top to bottom or bottom to top. Okay, little dab will do us. All right, now I didn't sand that edge first because again I trimmed it after it was all glued together, so that took off any of the excess glue on the edge and straightened out all the edges that, you know, which is, those two are the reasons that we sand. So that's why that did or did not happen. All right, very excited about this, folks. We are now carrying Tokenol. I've played with a lot of burnishing stuff over the years, and I really like this stuff. Very easy to use. It works on a variety of leathers. And on things that I've done like this, where there's like an exotic with a veg tan or a bridle, it really works nicely. So we've got hundreds of cans of it. Currently we have it in the clear and then also black. On our next order we will order the dark brown as well. The colored ones, they're okay. I do like the clear a lot, but if I was doing something that was all dark, I would really like the dark brown or the black as well. But if your leather is struck through, meaning that the dye is all the way on the edges and everything, there's not like that gray where it didn't get dyed, or tan or whatever. If the leather is struck through with its dye, you don't necessarily need one of the colored ones. Okay? Alright. So, now that I have this stuff all over my finger here, I have to locate my paper towels. I'm going to let that set on that edge just for 30 seconds to a minute, something like that. I'm going to wipe off the excess, and then I'm going to use a piece of, you can use anything. You can use a wooden slicker, you can use a piece of canvas, I mean, whatever, okay? Alright, wiped off the excess with a paper towel. Now I'm just going to use one of my wooden handled tools here, okay? I don't need a separate fancy slicker when I got all these wooden handles laying around. Okay? I'm just going to give it a rub. You don't have to rub it hard. You don't have to like really create a physical like heat type burnish. You just kind of lay the fibers down. Okay? If this were any thinner than it is, I might put it in my stitching clamp to do certain areas of it, just to give it some rigidity whilst I burnish. Okay, there we go. I'm going to move some things around on my desk and get ready for the next thing that I need to do, which is, it's now time to put the entire wallet together. Okay, so this piece and this piece on one side, this piece on the other side, the back, and then of course we're going to do this one with this ostrich piece here. So it'll be the ostrich piece plus the English bridle back. We were going to do that one out of 10. I don't remember if I cut it out or not. There it is. Okay, so we're going to line this with this and then put those on it. But remember when I overcut this piece, well, I'm going to take and skive down my ostrich a little bit so that all the edges will be a little bit thinner when I glue them all together, and then I'll trim the ostrich. So I'll skive far enough into the edges that I know that every bit of this thing would be, you know, thinned on the edges once I even trimmed it down after I glued it. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so this is my first time to play with a piece of ostrich. I know nothing about this leather, so this whole wallet's just an experiment for me. And I skived it on the NP4 machine, and I mean the edges look uniform, but you can tell where some of it was stretchier and just went right through it, and then some of it must have been a bit more rigid. Anyway, it's a leather I obviously need to play with some more and gain a little bit more experience. So, what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to take my wallet back, and I'm going to just slather it in contact cement, okay? And then I'm going to do the exact same thing with my piece of ostrich, okay? Now, generally I like to use a piece of paper or something like that, but I happen to have the paper towels right here from when I just used the token oil. So I'm going to use paper towel. Okay. So get this good gooey stuff all over this piece. Just like so. Okay, and I'll move that one out of the way. Now I'm going to do it all over the back of this ostrich piece, and then we're going to let it rest for a few minutes while the glue sets up. And then when we put the two together, I'm going to use everything I've got to roll it, hammer it, whatever, and get it as stuck good as I can, because this fuzzy backed leather really needs to compress the fibers you know, with the glue. So I need that sucker stuck. Okay. Got my stitching clamp on the desk, and it really narrows my shoulder room because I just kind of put it off to the side so I don't have to keep taking it on and off during a video. There have been times that I've put so much adhesive on something that basically I just upended the bottle and kind of poured it on. See how, you know, get her all in there. Alright, so I'm going to pause the camera for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. Get the adhesive to really be ready to stick. And then I'm going to stick these two pieces together. And then I'm going to put my template back on it and trim the excess ostrich from the wallet back. Okay, so this had a couple of minutes to set up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and put this piece, my lining piece, right along that edge there. But then I'm going to flip it over without letting them lay against each other yet, so that I can flatten the ostrich as I add it to the lining piece. Okay, because I don't want a wrinkle in there, and if I just threw the lining piece on it, it could wrinkle, and then we'd just be in a world of trouble because that wrinkle is not going anywhere, and I don't want to go cut another piece of ostrich out. Okay, there we have it. So, again, I skived enough that I knew that all the areas would be covered by a skive. Alright. I said I was going to roll this, but honestly I don't think a roller is going to do me any good because of the giant quills. The roller would just kind of roll along the top of those. So I'm going to take my fingers here and work down the ostrich in between all the quills and get her good and stuck. And then I'll trim that excess off. Okay? Now, you know what? I'm going to move my rubber here once again so that when I trim this it won't try to sink into the rubber. Put my template back on, because remember the back of this wallet was square, so the template can rotate 90 degrees and still be in the right spot. I always hate cutting the far side of it. Just can't see it. Alright. One more edge. There we go. I am going to take a roller cutter, a rotary cutter, because this edge right here just didn't want to cut plainly. So I'll take a rotary cutter since this is very thin leather anyway. There. Got that little edge right off. Alright, so there we have it. a nice wallet back. Of ostrich. Okay. When we fold it, this doesn't get all wrinkly and stuff. It looks good. So, now we have to apply the outsides to the insides. Okay. It's going to look really good as a color combination with the tan and the dark brown. And it'll be just like this. So I'm going to put these on here. And I'm going to use my fingernail again. I'm going to mark just underneath it so that I know where to not glue anymore. Okay. Same thing on this other side over here. Just underneath it. Now I'm going to put contact cement around these three edges, and then on this, just the three skive sides. Okay, so, and then on this, the three sides that are not sewn together. Okay. And again, you can rough it up first if you like. It probably would help for everything to stick together, but in order to save some time here, I'm not as concerned about it because I know my edges will be clean regardless. See how much better that cement works when it's not thick as snot. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to let all this set up for a couple of minutes so it'll be ready to stick together, and we'll be back. Okay, this has set up enough. I'll set her down here, and one at a time I'm going to put these pieces, and I'll start in the corner and just kind of tack it down barely. And work my way down the edges of it to make sure it's on there good and square. Just like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side with the other piece here. Ooh, got some glue all over the back of it, but I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and then I'll use my little piece of crepe rubber here. If my fingers don't roll it off fine, I'll use that crepe rubber and get that right off. Alright, so I got those two sides on there now. Pick it up a little bit so the light reflects off of it and you can actually see it. Rub some of that extra glue off now that it's able. Alright, one more little thing to glue, which is this piece, the cash pocket, to right here. Okay? And then we're going to start poking holes and sewing again. So I'm going to put my cash pocket on here, and I'm going to mark with my fingernail right underneath it, just like I have on all the other pieces, so I know where to stop gluing. we go. And then on this one, we'll just do the sides that are not rounded. I got that rounded corner, so I'm not going to do that top. I'm not going to do that side. I'll just do right here and then along the bottom. There we go. All right. I'm gonna get this to set up just enough that I can stick it together so we can start poking holes. And I'm gonna turn on my little electric creaser machine again to start getting hot so that I can crease around the outsides where I want my stitch lines to be, okay? Because once again, it's very hard to mark leathers that aren't veg tan, okay? This ostrich leather, you can't just take a wing divider and make a mark on it like you can veg tan or bridle, you know, a veg tan base like bridle or harness, something like that, okay? So everything's ready. When I come back, my creaser will be nice and warm, and we'll make a line around the outside, around the outside, around the outside, and we'll get ready to stitch. Alright, so my creaser is good and hot. My leather's ready. That clear piece of plastic out of there, I'm sure I'll burn that up. And I'm going to take and just create me a crease, a stitch line, all the way around this ostrich. Just go nice and slow, because anywhere I go over a quill, I risk running off of it and altering my line. Okay, there's what we're doing. You see the line there at the bottom? Again, I can't do that with a wing divider. It just won't mark it. So, this electric creaser is coming in handy. I really like it. That was one of the reasons that I never really messed with much exotics and things like that, is because honestly I didn't know how to do things like mark it for a stitch line and stuff. So, turns out this little gadget does have some great uses. I had a guy at one of the leather shows show me one of these things, and I asked him, I was like, well, what, you know, how can it help me? What's it good for? And, well, he didn't do a very good job of telling me, I guess, because, I mean, I was unimpressed. I did not buy one. But one of the things he kept talking about was edge paint. There are some edge paints that are heat moldable. So you'd get your glop edge paint on there and it dries, and then you can take heat and smooth it out and stuff like that. And there's tips for those machines for doing that. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's neat, but I don't edge paint much. I don't like to edge paint. And so, yeah. But it turns out there's a billion other things to use one of these things for. So, and here's one of them, is being able to mark a stitch line on a leather like that. Now, I'm going to switch cameras one mo again and go back to the overhead. Actually, no, I'm not. You get a better angle of what I'm about to do from right here. So, all I'm going to do now is drop my needles in the floor. What I meant to say to do, though, was get my maul, my 8 stitches per inch pricking iron, and I'm going to start running around this sucker. And I'm just going to put my pricking iron just to the inside of that little line that I just made. Alright, so I'm not going to make you watch me do this 50 times going all the way around. So I'm going to pause the video. But all I'm doing is this, and then I'm going to hand sew that edge. And when I come back, all of that will be done. Alright folks, so here it is. Okay, all nice and sewn up and pretty. Good to go. Alright, so it will fold in half like that. But after I sewed it up, I did go over there to the sander and sand my edges to where they're nice and flush and there's no glue. Okay, now I'm going to use my little edge beveler again and go all the way around it. Okay. We'll see how fun it is to edge bevel the ostrich in a second. I don't know how that's going to turn out. Luckily my beveler is nice and sharp. Okay, and again, it can be a little bit difficult going over where the cards are stacked, but you just go about it as best you can and make sure they stay nice and even. The sharper your beveler is, your edger is on this, the better of a job you'll get out of it. Okay. The ostrich is doing pretty good. I'm going easy on it. I'm not trying to really gouge a lot off of it by any means. I'm just barely edging her. Here we have a couple of quills in the way, and that presents a little bit of a challenge, but we'll figure it out. If I have to, I'll take my scalpel and just shave a little of that quill off. There we go. Alright, now the next thing I'm going to do, this wallet has sharp corners on it right now. And while I don't need to round them like I do on some things, I am just going to barely nip off a tiny bit of them, okay? And it'll make a nicer finished product, and it'll burnish better. Because sharp corners tend to fold backward when you're burnishing, and that can be a problem, of course. Right. There we go. As I went around, I got a little bit bigger on the last one, so there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take my token hole, and I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did on the edges of the card pockets. I'm going to put a little bit on the edge, and I'm going to let it set for just a minute, and then I will burnish it with one of my fancy wooden handles. We'll see how it does on the ostrich. I know it does really nice on the alligator I've been using. So we'll see how it does on the ostrich. There we go. I'll put it on 2 sides at a time, that way it'll make this a little bit quicker. The 2 sides are letting it soak in a little bit. Because the best, like I said, the best results I've found is letting it set on there for a minute or so, then wiping off the excess. It seems to work really well. Okay. All right, I'll just use the wooden handle of my edger here. And what do you know, it does just as pretty of a job as the wooden handle of my awl did. A lot of the time when you see a video or a picture on Instagram, you know, of these edges that have multiple colors of leather and you can just see all the layers so perfectly, I really do believe that that's probably Tokenol or a product much like Tokenol that they're using to achieve that. And while I haven't played with it much yet as far as doing that type of thing, I really look forward to doing that some. Because I love the effect that folks have when they have, say, a red or a green piece and then a natural piece and then, you know, another red or green or something, and have that nice layered effect on their edges. And to me, good edges can make or break a leather project. Alright, so I did 2 of the 4 edges here. There's one right there and one right there. And they look absolutely great. I don't know how well the camera will focus in on them, but anyway, they're very clean, they're very nice, and they do have kind of that layered effect we were just discussing. So, I'm going to do the other 2 edges, and that'll be that as far as having this sucker done. So this was the Roper Wallet 2.0. The template for it is available on our website. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. But until next time, I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply. Have a great day.